Gryskin's Flight. From the day that Carr went to live with the gamekeeper, he abandoned entirely his forbidden chase in the forest. This was due not only to his being thoroughly frightened, but also to the fact that he did not wish to make the gamekeeper angry at him. Ever since his new master saved his life, the dog loved him above everything else. He thought only of following him and watching over him. If he left the house, Carr would run ahead to make sure that the way was clear. If he sat at home, Carr would lie before the door and keep a close watch on everyone who came and went. When all was quiet at the lodge, when no footsteps were heard on the road, and the gamekeeper was working in his garden, Carr would amuse himself playing with the baby elk. At first the dog had no desire to leave his master even for a moment. Since he accompanied him everywhere, he went with him to the cowshed. When he gave the elk calf its milk, the dog would sit outside the stall and gaze at it. The gamekeeper called the calf Gryskn because he thought it did not merit a prettier name, and Carr agreed with him on that point. Every time the dog looked at it, he thought he had never seen anything so ugly and misshapen as the baby elk, with its long, shambly legs which hung down from the body like loose stilts. The head was large, old, and wrinkled, and it always drooped to one side. The skin lay in tucks and folds, as if the animal had put on a coat that had not been made for him. Always doleful and discontented, curiously enough, he jumped up every time Carr appeared, as if glad to see him. The elf calf became less hopeful from day to day, did not grow any, and at last he could not even rise when he saw Carr. Then the dog jumped up into the crib to greet him, and thereupon a light kindled in the eyes of the poor creature, as if a cherished longing were fulfilled. After that, Carr visited the elf calf every day and spent many hours with him, licking his coat, playing and racing with him, till he taught him a little of everything a forest animal should know. It was remarkable that, from the time Carr began to visit the elf in his stall, the latter seemed more contented and began to grow. After he was fairly started, he grew so rapidly that in a couple of weeks the stall could no longer hold him, and he had to be moved into a grove. When he'd been in the grove 2 months, his legs were so long that he could step over the fence whenever he wished. Then the lord of the manor gave the gamekeeper permission to put up a higher fence to allow him more space. Here the elk lived for several years and grew up into a strong and handsome animal. Carr kept him company as often as he could, but now no longer through pity, for a great friendship had sprung up between the two. The elk was always inclined to be melancholy, listless, and indifferent, but Carr knew how to make him playful and happy. Gryskn had lived for 5 summers on the gamekeeper's place, when his owner received a letter from a zoological garden abroad asking if the elk might be purchased. The master was pleased with the proposal. The gamekeeper was distressed, but had not the power to say no, so it was decided that the elk should be sold. Carr soon discovered that what was in the air, and ran over to the elk to have a chat with him. The dog was very much distressed at the thought of losing his friend, but the elk took the matter calmly, and seemed neither glad nor sorry. Do you think of letting them send you away without offering resistance?" asked Carr. What good would do to resist?" asked Gryskn. "I should prefer to remain where I am, naturally, but if I've been sold, I shall have to go, of course." Carr looked at Gryskn and measured him with his eyes. It was apparent that the elk was not yet fully grown. He did not have the broad antlers, high hump, and long mane of the mature elk, but he certainly had strength enough to fight for his freedom. "One can see that he has been in captivity all his life," thought Carr, but said nothing. Carr left and did not return to the grove till long past midnight. By that time he knew Gryskn would be awake and eating his breakfast. "Of course you are doing right, Gryskn, in letting them take you away," remarked Carr, who appeared now to be calm and satisfied. "You will be a prisoner in a large park and will have no responsibilities. It seems a pity that you must leave here without having seen the forest. You know your ancestors have a saying, the elk are one with the forest. But you haven't even been in a forest." Gryskn glanced up from the clover which he stood munching. "Indeed, I should love to see the forest, but how am I to get over the fence?" he asked with his usual apathy. "Oh, that is difficult for one who has such short legs," said Carr. The elk glanced slyly at the dog, who jumped the fence many times a day, little as he was. He walked over the fence, and with one spring he was on the other side, without knowing how it had happened. Then Carr and Gryskn went into the forest. It was a beautiful moonlit night in late summer, but in among the trees it was dark, and the elk walked along slowly. "Perhaps we had better turn back," said Carr. "You who have never before trampled the wild forest might easily break your legs." Gryskn moved more rapidly and with more courage. Carr conducted the elk to a part of the forest where the pines grew so thickly that no wind could penetrate them. "It is here that your kind are in the habit of seeking shelter from cold and storm," said Carr. "Here they stand under the open skies all winter. But you will fare much better where you are going, for you will stand in a shed with a roof over your head, like an ox." Gryskn made no comment, but stood quietly and drank the strong, piney air. "Have you anything more to show me, or have I now seen the whole forest?" he asked. Then Carr went with him to a big marsh, and showed him the clods and quagmire. "Over this marsh the elk will take flight when they are in peril," said Carr. "I don't know how they manage it, but large and heavy as they are, they can walk here without sinking. Of course, you couldn't hold yourself up on such dangerous ground, but then there is no occasion for you to do so, for you will never be hounded by hunters." Gryskn made no retort, but with a leap he was out on the marsh, and happy when he felt how the clods rocked under him. He dashed across the marsh and came back again to Carr without having stepped into a mud hole. "Have we seen the whole forest now?" he asked. "No, not yet," said Carr. He next conducted the elk to a skirt of the forest, where fine oaks, lindens, and aspen grew. "Here your kind eat leaves and bark, which they consider the choicest of foods, but you will probably get better fare abroad." Gryskn was astonished when he saw the enormous leaf trees spreading like a great canopy above him. He ate both oak leaves and aspen bark. "These taste deliciously bitter and good," he remarked, "better than clover." Then wasn't it well that you should taste them once?" said the dog. Thereupon he took the elk down a little forest lake. The water was as smooth as a mirror and reflected the shores, which were veiled in thin light mists. When Gryskn saw the lake, he stood entranced. "What is this, Carr?" he asked. It was the first time he had seen a lake. "It is a large body of water, a lake," said Carr. "Your people swim across it from shore to shore. One could hardly expect you to be familiar with this, but at least you should go in and take a swim."